U.S. Special Forces hit an ISIS stronghold in Syria. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine heats up, and the global pandemic continues as the southern U.S. border remains essentially open. For more on all of this, I'm joined by foreign policy expert and media analyst Dr. Walid Phares. Walid, thanks for being here. I want to begin with the U.S. strike on Syria. How significant is this assassination, and how much does this disrupt ISIS?
See, Raymond, the elimination of al-Quraishi, the second commander of ISIS in the Middle East, that's Syria and Iraq and Lebanon, is a great tactical success. This is showing that our special operations or special forces can go also into enemy territory, like they've executed here, far deep inside, and then take out the dangerous commanders. That's on the one hand. But what it brings to my analysis is the fact that a few months ago, we let go of Afghanistan to the Taliban. So we eliminate one of these, and then hundreds and thousands are now organizing in Afghanistan. So yes, the U.S. military always are successful in what we ask them, but we need to question the administration on the strategy in Afghanistan, because it will have implications again in Syria, again in Iraq. ISIS is back. We eliminated one commander. We need a strategy to eliminate the organization.
I want to move on to other topics. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz arrived in Bahrain this week on an unannounced visit. Israel's defense ministry said on Wednesday that Gantz would sign a security cooperation agreement with Bahrain, which, along with the neighboring UAE, normalized relations with Israel in 2020. There have been missile attacks on the Arab Emirates by an Iran-backed Yemen group. Is that what's driving this agreement?
No, it's beyond. You and I have discussed it. I just remind you, even years ago, we projected that, number one, there will be an Arab coalition to rise against Iran, against the jihadists, against the Brotherhood, and that eventually there will be an Arab-Israeli understanding treaty in the region. All of that we've discussed in 17, 18, and 19, and it did happen, especially after the visit by Trump, former President Trump, to Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. Now what is happening is beyond peace. This is not just peace. Egypt and Israel have peace. Jordan and Israel have peace. This is strategic alliance. I mean, especially the last agreement, the one you just mentioned, between Israel and Bahrain, is something really at the vanguard of what has been achieved. And I believe that the missiles coming to, crash in the UAE are a response to this alliance. They are concerned that the technology and wealth of the UAE and Bahrain, married to the military might of Israel, is going to create the response to Iran, regardless of us, regardless of the Iran deal.
And speaking of the Iran deal, the U.S. and European allies are talking again about restoring that Iran nuclear deal. Biden administration officials were talking about this on Monday. What do you make of restoring this deal?
This is another disaster. I mean, we can't have every year a major disaster. Last year, we restored Afghanistan to the Taliban. This year, we're going to restore recognition and power and money to the Iranian regime. There is something very wrong about this foreign policy. But the question that I have goes beyond that. I mean, we know that the current Biden administration is implementing the past Obama administration policies. But many are asking me, why are we so stubborn and willing to go back to a deal that has proven that it would only strengthen Iran? It looks like there are a lot of interest behind this, a lot of financial interest. People want to go to the market, a lot of lobbies. And that is of great concern to me, that our foreign policy is not only based on national security, but also on lobbying and finances.
Since the 2015 agreement, Iran's gone back to enriching uranium and has purified some of its new stockpile to a level of 60%, which can be used to create nuclear weapons. Now, Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN agency that inspects Iran's production facilities, said this: a country enriching 60% is a very serious thing. Only countries making bombs are reaching this level. Walid, can Iran be trusted? And more importantly, what does the U.S. stand to gain, if anything, from a deal like this?
let's go point by point. Can the Iranian regime be trusted? Where can we trust them? Why are they buying, testing, developing long-range ballistic missiles to transport what? Flowers and roses? It's designed basically to shoot or to use tactical nuclear bombs. So what is happening right now is the enrichment is at 60%. It's correct. This is very dangerous. But the Iran regime may surprise us with something else. Guess what? With the money they're going to get from the renewal of the Iran deal, they can buy a tactical nuke. So we are focusing on the enrichment of uranium, which can manipulate up and down, while they could get from, who knows, North Korea or others, some tactical bombs, and would surprise us.
Wow. The Biden administration sending extra troops to Europe this week amid fears of a Russian invasion into Ukraine. Now, about 2,000 troops will be sent to Germany and Poland. There are already 1,000 in Germany. That'll go to Romania. What do you make of Biden's response to this Russian aggression? The response seems to be a symbolic one, that the U.S. is standing with its NATO allies.
Look, it's symbolic. It's good to send units to just be in solidarity, not even inside Ukraine, but with the NATO countries around Ukraine. That should have been a no question asked movement. But the size is not a deterring size. I mean, if it was the Trump administration, not to praise or not to praise or criticize, would have been much bigger, much larger. The movement for solidarity with Ukraine is very shy. So what the administration need to do is really show the strength and then negotiate if they want. I mean, we should be with negotiations. We should be against war, but si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, you basically need to prepare for the deterrence.
Walid, I want to continue with the security crisis that continues along the southern border. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection has reported nearly 500,000 migrant encounters at the border in the first quarter of this new fiscal year. Now, last year, more than 2 million unauthorized migrants came across the Mexican border. This number does not account for those who were stopped or detected. What's going on here? What kind of security risk does that kind of intrusion pose to the United States?
Raymond, of all the crises that you and I discussed and all the other battlefields, Iran, Ukraine, you name it, ISIS, what's happening in the southern border is the most dangerous, because this is about the collapse, the complete collapse of a national border of the United States. That by itself is will give an appeal, is a call for millions and millions of other people from Latin America and from other continents to just come and move in. This game of manipulation of demography is very dangerous. Every country in the world knows that this is dangerous. If we allow this to happen, we don't have an immigration policy. This is an invitation for a collapse of our national safety, and that could eventually trigger a collapse of our national security coming from the borders. So I think there needs to be a drastic change in that policy, and I don't know between now and next November how can that happen.
On Monday, President Joe Biden welcomed governors to the White House to discuss challenges facing the nation. He said this about migration.
We're working a lot with neighboring countries, a lot to do. If we figure out why they're leaving in the first place, it's not like people sit around and say in Guadalajara, I got a great idea, let's sell everything we have, give it to a coyote, take us across the border, leave us in the desert. A country doesn't want us, we don't speak the language. Won't that be fun?
How are we working with neighboring countries, Walid? We know why people are leaving Guatemala and El Salvador. What is this administration doing with those countries to keep people from leaving and crossing into the U.S.?
Under the previous administration, I was part of some of the ideas discussed. The strategy was to actually stop that problem not at the border and dealing with a humanitarian situation. People are here, so what can we do? And even though we should be very firm and at the same time be humanitarian by creating a safe zone inside Mexico, as this has happened all over the world. We went, I mean, the previous administration went all the way to discuss it with the Central American governments. That should have been the long term, because what we're doing right now, we are breaking international law, because this is an international issue. It's not an American issue at the border only, which is for most Americans, but it's an international issue. We should create the conditions for this population not to break 3 borders before getting to our border. And that would be in Latin America, in Central America, and in Mexico. And in the last few years before this administration, there was a beginning of an understanding with the Mexican government. They deployed 27,000 soldiers. That was huge. But of course, at the time, the administration was involved in so much fight with the opposition that they did not allow the administration to develop the right strategies along with the Latin American governments.
Yeah. And now the Department of Homeland Security, as of December 6th, officially relaunched the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy after a district court order. Now, they cite a technical problem with the Biden administration's attempt to terminate that Remain in Mexico order. The administration says it's now obeying the court order, but simultaneously appealing to terminate the program. So is this program in force now, Walid, the Remain in Mexico policy?
As far as we can see, you and I, these reports of night flights landing individuals, large number of individuals in a number of cities, I don't think they are even applying the policy. Maybe on the format, on the formal level, they are, but in reality, there is a strategic political decision which I can't even comprehend after many years of breaking those borders and bringing in an inorganized and disorganized way thousands of people. For what? For domestic politics? I mean, be clear about it. This administration should be clear, saying, oh, we want to change the demography of the United States to win in every election. If they say it, at least we have a debate. But they're not even mentioning why they are doing this policy that not one single country in the world has adopted.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, was asked why large numbers of single adult men are being released into the U.S. just hours after being apprehended at the border. Listen.
But we know that just between March and August, which is a very small sample size, DHS says more than 47,000 of these migrants that were given notices to report did not show up. So why let them into the U.S. unsupervised in the first place?
Well, again, we have a stringent protocols and processes that we implement here. That includes expelling individuals who come in under Title 42, given we are still in a global pandemic, and includes those who do not show up will be subject to the repercussions of that.
Walid, your reaction. We know people do not show up for their court hearings. Why allow these men to come in and essentially be set loose, and then they never show up for the court hearing?
It's not just why do we allow them to come. It's way bigger than this, Raymond. There are organizations that are funded here in the United States by the supporters of this administration who are going to Central America, organizing these movements. You follow me? All the way from Central America. Then they meet them at the border. Then they organize the passing or the thrust into this border. Then a lobby inside the United States that would push against any drive to organize it at the border and keep them in Mexico. And then it's the government that is shuttling them into cities and then say, well, they're going to go to their court appearances. And everybody knows that they're not going to go. But beyond that, once they are illegal in the country, you're going to have some politicians who are going to come and say, well, they have the right to vote even if they are illegal. So you see the big picture? It's to bring voters from Central America and use them in the United States. That's reality. That's the brutal reality.
Walid, I have to move on, and we could talk about the non-citizens that have been apprehended at the border, who are not from Central and South America, but they're from other parts of the world. I mean, that porous border, as you've mentioned, it presents a serious security issue for the United States, and it's ongoing because we don't know who's coming in. I need to move on, though. The UN has been accused of colluding with China to stall a Human Rights Council report on alleged abuses against minorities, specifically the Uyghur Muslims, until after the Winter Olympics. According to reporting by the South China Morning Post, the UN's Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said there was no timeline for releasing its report, but confirmed the publication would not be ready before the Winter Olympics. Is the UN's human rights body I can't imagine. They've been working on this report for 3 years, and now it looks like they're stalling until after this big show for Beijing.
Well, of course, we've seen this previously, Raymond, when the human rights body of the United Nations have been including the greatest abusers of human rights on the planet. I mean, these regimes were sitting there as protectors of human rights, and in fact, they were the ones who were obstructing them. With China, it's even the double. Why? We know there are human rights abuses in China. We know the issue of the Uyghurs. We know other issues as well, including, of course, Hong Kong. The problem is that the bureaucracies around the world, including within the United Nations, somehow have been influenced by these countries, including in this case, the government of China. So it's a vicious circle that you cannot break because those who are going to make the decision are already influenced by overseas powers.
It's remarkable. We'll have to leave it there. Walid Phares, thank you for being here, for your insight. You can follow Dr. Phares on Twitter at Walid Phares. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.